sermon title for today is How to Deal with Disappointment. And, you know, I have come to realize, certainly as I worked on this sermon this week, I've come to realize that there are many things that disappoint us in life. I mean, you can make a long list of the things that would disappoint us in life, but I think that for me personally, probably you as well, I think that probably the greatest disappointment of all are people. You know, people let us down, and to be honest with you, we let people down. That's kind of how it works. Nobody's perfect, and that's kind of how it is. And so, you know, to make it in life, we have to learn to deal with the people, especially the people that disappoint us the most. One of the secrets of success actually in living this life is learning how to deal with the people who disappoint us the most. If there's anybody in the Bible, you know, as I thought about this week, and I thought about, well, who is it in the Bible that would probably know how to deal with this situation? I think that it was probably Moses. I mean, Moses probably put up with more complaining than anybody else. You know, he had a million men that he was leading, plus women and children, and most of them were pretty good at complaining and grumbling. They really did a lot of that as you read the Bible. I mean, I think he put up with more than anything, more than most anybody else when it comes to complaining and grumbling. I think it probably was the Jews' favorite pastime, quite frankly. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why it took them 40 years, because of the grumbling and complaining, the Israelites. You know that's one of the reasons why it took them 40 years to travel on an 11-day journey? Did you know that they spent 40 years in the wilderness, and the Bible says that if they would have just went from here to there, it should have taken them 11 days. 11 days. They were extremely quick to criticize Moses. Keep in mind, Moses was God's leader. Moses was the one chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of bondage, and all they wanted to do was criticize his leadership, criticize his decisions, criticize his motives. There's a great story in Exodus that I want to share with you today about the Israelites and about the problems that they had. One of the problems that they had, of course, was a water problem. I mean, you realize, of course, about some of the water problem, and one of them is the Red Sea. You know, they come up to the Red Sea, and that's a problem. They can't get across the Red Sea, obviously, and they say, you know, how are we going to get across there? How are we going to make it across? The next problem was they didn't have any water. And you probably remember that story. And, of course, Moses ended up hitting the rock, and water came out of the rock. And then the one I want to talk about today, though, is the third problem. That's the problem when they went to a place called Marah. And, you know, they found that the water there, they had water there, but the water that they had was bitter, and they didn't want to drink it. And it's from this incident in Moses' life and his reaction that we see three lessons in disappointment. Three things that we can learn from Moses and the disappointment. So we're going to read from Exodus today in the 15th chapter, verse 22. It says this: Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding any water. Now, yes, I give them this. This is a difficult situation that they're faced with, but I want to share with three facts about disappointment today from this story. Fact number one: the greatest successes in life are often followed by failure. Have you noticed that? The greatest successes in life are often followed by failure. Did you know that it was only 3 days after they saw that great miracle of the parting of the Red Sea? They saw that great parting of the Red Sea. Now they're grumbling and complaining about God not meeting their needs. Only 3 days. For me, it's like I realized that there was a lot of miracles. They saw, you know, Pharaoh and going through all of the things and the plagues and all of that. But to me, the Red Sea had to have been one of the greatest miracles they were ever going to see. Can you imagine standing at a sea and watching the water part? Can you imagine that taking place? And 3 days later, they're grumbling and complaining that God can't meet their needs. You know, in the beginning of this chapter, right after the Red Sea, here's what they said. They were singing praises to God back then. You know, they were so pleased with God. He looked after them so well, they thought. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord right after the Red Sea. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Then, of course, 3 days later, or just barely 3 days later, they're grumbling and they're complaining. Have you noticed that every new day brings enough problems of its own? Have you noticed that? I mean, we go to bed one night, we've got everything compartmentalized that day. We've got everything in order. We've got taken care of everything. And the next day you find more things to do. More issues to do. Actually, Jesus is the one that said it. Back in Matthew 6, he said this: each day has enough problems of its own. And then later on, as they're entering the land of Canaan, which is their promised land, and they take over the largest city in Canaan, which is called Jericho, and they did that, by the way, with not raising a sword. All they did was obey what God said. He said, walk around a few days, and the walls will come tumbling down, and that's what they did. So they have another great big experience. But then the very next week, they go to a little tiny dinky town called Aha, and they are defeated. Maybe that's where that term came from, Aha. And they're defeated by this little tiny dinky town. It's the ahas that get us, right? It's the ahas that get us. I mean, when the big crises come into our lives, we know what to do with them. We know how to handle them. We raise our hands and say, God, I can't do this. I can't handle this by myself. Help, God, help. We depend on God in the great big situations in life, but many times, the smaller things, we tend to think that, I got this. How many times have we said that in our lives? God, you just stand back and watch. I got this. As I was reading this passage, this week, and I was thinking about a question came into my mind, and the question was this: why did God lead them to Marah in the first place where the water was bitter? I mean, God is a purposeful God. He's got a reason and a plan for everything. So that's why I asked that question. Why did he lead them to a place where the water was bitter? And actually, he answered that for us himself. He said in verse 25 says, there the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. There he tested them. God led them to Marah to test them. I am convinced at this point in place in my life where I understand that just about everything is a test. I mean, God just tests us all the time, and he wants us to pass the test. So God takes them to Marah. He puts them in a situation where they get to choose one way or the other what they're going to do. Are they going to believe that he's going to take care of them? Are they going to gripe and complain? What are they going to do? They took the test and failed it. Moses passed the test, but I think just about everybody else failed it. So when disappointment comes into your life, when disappointment comes into my life, how do we handle disappointment? Listen to the Israel's response to their disappointment. Verse 24, they said this: so the people, they grumbled and complained against Moses, saying, what are we to drink? That's how they handled it. Actually, that's a typical response when you think about it. Let's be honest today. That's a typical response. When we don't get our way, we grumble and we gripe and we complain and we criticize. That's probably the typical response. The second thing is this: the greatest services in our life are often followed by forgetfulness. Often followed by forgetfulness. These people had a really short memory. Can you imagine think about all of the wonderful miracles that God had done in their life to get them to the promised land, and it's as if they forgot it all. It's as if they left them he's never done anything for me. It was only 3 days after the Red Sea. They had just witnessed the greatest miracle, I think, in their whole lives. And they come up and they think, well, now we're going to criticize and badmouth God, badmouth his leader, because he don't never do nothing for us. Just 3 days later. Have you noticed how fast we forget? I mean, it's all about, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me lately, God? So what do we do when someone disappoints us? What do we do when someone lets us down? We need to know this, because I can assure you that that's going to happen again in your life. That's going to happen again in my life. There are 3 things that Moses didn't do and 2 things that Moses did do. And we can learn from him about how to deal with disappointment. That's why it's in here. God put these stories in the Bible to teach us how to react and how to behave. First, when we're disappointed, don't curse it. And what I mean by that is don't try to get even. The Bible says in Romans 12:14, you remember this verse, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. That's what we do, right? I mean, when somebody, really, when somebody persecutes us, when somebody disappoints us, when somebody does something that we don't like, we bless them, right? That's what we do as Christians. Yeah? You're lying. Come on. I'm to be honest with you. Be honest today. That's not usually what we do. That's not usually what we do. The natural reaction for most of us is this. We want to get even. We want to get even. And we run it around in our mind, and then we think about, how can I get even with these people? Here's what Moses might have said there. Good luck with you guys then. You know what? If you're going to grumble and complain and criticize every single move that I make, you know what? I'm going to leave you here. You try to figure out how to get back to Egypt, because I'm going on to the promised land without you. But that's not what he did. That's not what he did. Moses didn't curse them. Number 2, don't nurse it. In other words, don't take it personal. What I mean by that is, don't have a pity party and invite yourself. That's what you're not supposed to do. Ephesians, you know, you want to know how to deal with relationships. Whenever I have to talk with somebody about relationships, I always go to the 4th chapter of Ephesians. Listen to what Ephesians has to say about this situation. Ephesians verse 26 and 27 says this. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Great scripture verses there. Basically, it's saying this. Yes, you may get angry about some situation. Yes, people will disappoint you, and you can get angry about that. But here's the thing. Don't let it last overnight, because if you let it last overnight, then you're going to give the devil a foothold. Do we really want to do that? Do we really want to give a devil a foothold? Is that really what we want to do? God gives us clear instructions about how to deal with anger, how to deal with situations where somebody disappoints us. He says, deal with it that day and let it go. I know people, you know people, it might be us. We will deal with it for a week, a month, and sometimes years. People will hold on to that angerness about people and give the devil a foothold every time. We're not supposed to do that, God says. Actually, Job was a great one in this. You know, I mean, if anybody had reasons to be angry at this or that or situations in their lives, it was probably Job. And here's what he said. You are only hurting yourself when you're angry. Isn't that the truth? Number 3, in Moses' life, do not rehearse it. You know, when we've been hurt, the tendency is to go over it and over it again. If you notice that, especially when it first happens, I notice that I do that myself. I tend to go over it and over it as if somehow that's going to change it or fix it or adjust it or something like that. But the Bible says don't do that. I'm learning not to do that. Ephesians 4:31 says this. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling, and slander, along with every form of malice. God gives us clear instructions, and he says it really, really simple. He says, get rid of it. Don't hold on to it. Don't roll it around in your mind. Don't try to get back at people. Don't do these things. Get rid of it. Have you noticed that every time we rehearse a hurt, it gets bigger? Have you noticed that? Or a problem or a worry? Have you noticed every time we think about it, it like grows and grows and grows and grows? God says when somebody disappoints you, when somebody makes you angry, get rid of it that day. Then what do? Well, Moses actually said, here's what we do in verse 25. I'll read that again. Verse 25 of our text today, Exodus 25 says this. Then Moses cried out to the Lord. Pretty easy to understand that, right? That's pretty hard not to understand. When Moses was dealing with people criticizing him and disappointing him and challenging him his authority over and over and over again, what did he do? He went to the Lord. That's what he did. So instead of holding a pity party, instead of gossiping, instead of trying to line up people on our side, hello, you know what I'm talking about. We give the situation over to the Lord. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to give it over to the Lord. You give your disappointment to God. You say to God, you know what, God, I'm not going to deal with this right anyway, probably. I don't want to curse it. I don't want to rehearse it. I don't want to nurse it. God, help me to deal with it. Give it over to God. I said all the time in Wednesday night Bible studies, I always said, why did God give us his word? I say that all the time. The reason why God gave us His Word, the reason why God gave us this book is to teach us how to live our lives, is to teach us how to deal with disappointments, teach us how to deal with criticism, so that we can overcome the obstacles that come into our lives. And every one of us has obstacles in our lives. It teaches us how to overcome those obstacles in our lives. Then comes the last step. You let God reverse it. This is the best step. You let God reverse it. Yes, there are people who will hurt you in life. Absolutely. There absolutely are. Sometimes it's accidental, sometimes it's on purpose, but there are people who want you to fail. People who want me to fail. They want us to lose our jobs. They want us to lose this. They want us to lose that. They mean it for harm, but God always means it for good. Always means it for good. And if you're a Christian, Romans 8:29 applies to disappointment too. He says all things work together for good. Disappointments, yes, absolutely. Bad things, yes. Hurts, yes. Disappointments, yes, yes, yes. Listen, if you are a Christian, nothing comes into your life by accident. Did you know that? If you are a Christian, nothing comes into your life by accident. It is all Father filtered, every bit of it. I know there are people who say and believe and think that, you know what, the God of this world is behind this, and the God of this world is behind that. The God of this world, which is talking about the devil, can't do anything without God's permission. And if God has allowed it in our lives, there's a reason and a purpose and a plan for it. The truth is everything that comes into our lives is Father filtered, every single part of it. You say, even this hurt? Yes, that hurt. Absolutely. It is meant to teach you something. It is meant to teach me something. So then let God reverse it. Because Moses handled the situation correctly. Because he responded in the right way. He didn't nurse it. He didn't rehearse it. He didn't curse it. He gave it to God. And look what God did. God provided a solution. He pointed it out in verse 25 again. It said, then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. God provided a solution. What's interesting to me is in the Bible is that it didn't say that God created this piece of wood. It said that it was already there. All right? God showed it to Moses. It was already there. The piece of wood was already there. It was there all along. And if Moses had been caught up in self-pity, if he had been taking all of this stuff in personally, like, you know, they're criticizing me, they're attacking me, he would not have seen the solution to the disappointment that he is facing. He would have never seen the thing that turns bitterness into sweetness. Listen, as long as we are wallowing in our hurt, and as long as we are nursing our situations and rehearsing and cursing it, we cannot see what God has for the solution. We will not see it. You know, God had this tree there, had this solution right there. All they had to do was see it, but the Israelites, they didn't see it because they were grumbling and complaining. Thank God they had a leader who wasn't doing that. The third thing is this. The greatest shortages in life are often followed by fullness. You know, there is a turn around eventually. In verse 27, it goes on to say, then they came to Elam, where there were 12 springs. They want water, right? And they want good water, sweet water. Then they came to Elam, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped out near the water. So think about this. They are in the Sinai desert. They're in the Sinai desert, and they walk up. They continue to walk on. They walk up, and there are 12 springs and 70 palm trees in the Sinai desert that God had placed there for them. And there's enough water for everybody. Have you noticed that the greatest shortages in life are often followed by fullness? The question that I want to ask you today is this. The question that I asked myself this week is this. How far is Elam from Murrah? How far is the place of delight away from the place of disappointment? If you were to ask one of your smartphones, and if you asked Siri, you know, you would discover that Elam was only 5 miles from Murrah. Just 5 miles. In other words, you could walk there in one afternoon. However, the Israelites, they decided that they were going to stop at Murrah, and they stopped there and they grumbled and complained and fussed and cussed and hollered and kicked at Moses. rather than continue on and get to the place where they needed to be. So what's the point of the story today? Why is this in the Bible? I think that the point of the story today is we quit too soon. We quit too soon. We stop at Murrah and we get discouraged and we get disappointed and bitter and we don't like it and it doesn't taste good, and yet we stay there. We stay there. The message is this: do not quit. That's what the message is here. Elam is just a short walk away. Do not quit. And so the question that I have for you today is, how do you get from Murrah to Elam? How do you get from one place to the other? From a place of disappointment to delight? How do you get from that bitter experience where it's hot and it's dry and there's no water and it's in the middle of the desert to the place that we want to get, to the land of paradise? How do we get there? Actually, it's really simple. You just keep on trusting God with all your heart, and you just keep on moving forward. You just keep on moving forward. Did you notice in our text that it does not say that God brought Elam to them? God had done a lot of miracles in their lives. He could have pulled Elam, he could have easily pulled Elam right to them. But the truth of the matter is God didn't do that. God knew where they were. God always knows where we are. But it didn't say that I'm going to bring Elam to them. It says that they got there by moving on, by finally getting back up, stop complaining, stop fussing and hollering, doing and all of that. In spite of how they felt, they moved on forward. So what do you feel like giving up on today? Say, I've been dealing with this for weeks, months, years, whatever. I've been dealing with this and I feel like giving up. Right now it's distasteful for me. Right now it's bitter for me and I don't like it a bit. What do you feel like giving up on? I had a wife of an old friend call me recently, and she said to me, it feels like I'm living with a stranger. And of course she wanted me to call him. She said, I don't even know who he is anymore. So I called my old friend from my old church and I said, what's going on? What's going on with you? Something's up here. And he said, well, to tell you the truth, I don't feel like praying anymore. And to be honest with you, I don't feel like reading my Bible, and I don't feel like even going to church anymore. What should I do? I said, well, actually, it's a pretty simple answer. You keep on praying, you keep on reading your Bible, and you keep on going to church. That's what you do. He said, but my heart's not in it. And I said, well, do it anyway. Do it anyway. And I gave him this example. I said, listen, if you woke up tomorrow morning and you're in one of those moods where you don't feel like doing anything, and you call your boss up and you say to him, you know what, boss, I just don't, my heart's not in it. My heart's just not in work today. And I don't feel like coming into work today, and so I'm just going to sit around today and I'm going to watch TV for a while, and maybe tomorrow I might come, maybe I won't, but here's the thing. When I feel like it, I'll come back to work. I said, how do you think your boss would respond to that? Here's the truth. The truth is this, that most of the stuff that gets done in this world is done by people who really don't feel like doing it, but they do it anyway. They do it anyway. How many of you got up today and heard that little voice inside your head and says, I don't feel like going to church today? Me too. Me too. I don't feel like going to church today. Well, here's what I want to say to you. Thank you for coming today. I'm serious. Thank you for coming today, because you didn't listen to that little voice inside your head that said that, and you came because not everybody did. Thank you for coming today. I heard this week, and I love this quote. Listen to this. Maturity is living by your commitments and not by your feelings. Maturity is living by your commitments and not by your feelings. This morning you may feel like you're living in Murrah, and it's bitter and it's disappointing and it's distasteful and it's hard to swallow, but listen, you didn't miss God's will. You didn't miss God's will. Murrah is on the map, and God knows exactly where you are and the reason why you're there. The issue is how long you're going to stay there. God led them to Murrah even though Elam was only 5 miles away. But why? Why did he do that? He led them to Murrah to test them. That's why he did that. That's what the Bible said. And God is leading you through this experience, whatever experience it is that you're going through. He's leading you through this experience just as surely as He led the Israelites through their disappointment. This is your test. I hope and pray that you will pass it. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your word today and for its truth. The truth is you test us all the time. You're always allowing things into our lives that will grow us, that will stretch us, that will make us more Christ-like. Help us to respond in the right way. Lord, help us not to curse it and rehearse it and nurse it, but help us to disperse it. Lord, help us to give our problems over to you. Help us to cast our cares on you, because you said that you will care for us. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Our close